So this is part of the Bounce Back Better system, which is 16 modules of resilience training. And this is the third level, the first skill in the third level. So it looks like this. And we are here working with worry, doubting your doubts. That's the official title. And it builds on some of the other things we'll talk about, and I'll recap a little bit so that you're caught up to a certain extent. And if something's confusing, you can always ask. So a bit of a review. So when we were talking about the different levels. So on the scholar level, which was this first level here, we covered these 4 different topics, and resilience. And so very quickly, resilience defined is it's the ability to bounce back from adversity. We talked about the importance of the growth mindset as a fundamental, as a pillar of resilience, and learning how to take sort of the learner path as opposed to a judger path. And we discussed that all emotions serve a specific function, how it's important to increase our ratio of positive emotions to negative emotions in order to increase well-being, and then to befriend and work with our negative emotions. The role of gratitude and curiosity as an antidote to some of the negative emotions, and how having a strong and physically active as well as flexible body helps you be more resilient. Review of the ninja level, which is the second level, have these cool names, ninja, and we're on Maven now. So ninja was second level, and some of the things we mentioned in those sessions were that it's not what happens to you that affects how you feel, it's your interpretation of the situation. That's kind of a loaded topic. We spent an hour and a half on each one of these. So it's important to have flexible and accurate thinking for resilience. We discussed how to judge your judgments. In other words, taking fixed mindset beliefs or thoughts to court to look at if they're accurate or not. And today we have a few people who have joined us. Hello, everyone. Feel free to look and type in the chat box if you have any questions. And also we are recording, and we may or may not be live on Facebook right now if it's actually working, just so you know. So we also discussed reframing your thoughts, which is in a module called the ABCs of cognitive behavioral therapy. So reframing your thoughts, your B's, your beliefs, in order to impact your feelings and your actions, otherwise known as your C's, your consequences. So we discussed how to work with that and reframe them. We talked about emotional intelligence, what it is, and how noticing, naming, and navigating emotions within yourself and others can improve your resilience. Understanding the B to C connections in that ABC model, in other words, the beliefs to consequences, consequences, that connection and how you can manipulate them, using something called the SCARF model and something called the drama triangle, both of which you can Google, and there's all kinds of cool videos out there. And those can help you navigate social situations and improve your emotional intelligence. And the last module that we did was about breathing as a very useful tool for boosting vitality, well-being, resilience, meaning breathing is your direct line to your autonomic nervous system, which is otherwise autonomic. It's not something that you can control. Otherwise, you can use your breath to calm your body down, for example, and we'll get into that a little bit today. Okay, so what are we doing today? We are, and for those who didn't see, working with worry. We're talking about doubting your doubts and a very specific type of thinking as opposed to judgment thoughts. Today we're talking about worries, which is more like what if thoughts, things in the future. So we'll define it. We'll talk about how it works in the brain, how you can learn to appreciate your worrier, how it works in your body. We'll understand worry a little bit better, how it feels so real, and how to build warrior muscles to work with worry, and some ways you can train yourself. We're not going to cover worst case, best case, most likely today because of time and working with worry. So we'll give you some practical tools that you can use. And I'm going to ask you guys lots of questions, so be prepared to share and get put in the hot seat. If you really don't want to, that's okay, just let me know, but I will call on you otherwise. All right, so the gist of this is that worry is an emotion that we've evolved to feel. We're hardwired for it in the face of threats or perceived threats and danger. It's a very old kind of programming that we've had for millennia that we are still using because we still have the same brains that we had for many, many hundreds of years, thousands of years, but it's in a very different context. Now we have this new crazy world where things look nothing like they did for a very long time. Same brain, new world. And most of the things we worry about don't actually come to fruition. So what do we do about that? So unless we're under immediate threat, the emotion of worry actually gets in the way of effective problem solving. Today, you're going to learn to appreciate what worry is trying to do for you, as opposed to against you. You're going to recognize that you have a choice in whether you feel worry, and learn how to calm the physical sensations of worry, control the emotion by reframing it as excitement or useful energy, and remind yourself that you will handle it. I'll handle it. That's a big theme. And why is this? Why should we even care about this? Because it'll help you feel in control of your emotions. We want to feel like we have control over all these crazy things happening in our brain. And to help us actually problem solve rather than worry without purpose. It helps you preserve your physical health and well-being, and all the research around that. We can discuss some of it. And we can prevent doubt or worry from escalating into fear, panic, or greater anxiety. All right, so as a bit of an icebreaker here, I would like to hear from you guys. What have you what-ifed? What have you what-ifed? What do you typically worry about? So I'm going to call on you guys, and I want you to tell me your name, and you have no more than 15 seconds. Let's keep it really quick because we have a lot to cover. So just tell me your name and something that you typically worry about. Like, what's the go-to worry for you? All right, I'm going to stop the share, and we can all hopefully see each other. And my dad's with us today. I think his name is there. So, hi, Dad. Oh, hey, Jim Wen, how's it going? Long time no see. To see you. Okay, so I'm gonna let's just go through. My windows are kind of randomly organized, so I'll just start at the top and go around. And your name and go-to worry. Okay, Kat, you're first because you signed in first, so I think you're at the top left.
I'm Kat. My go-to worry, at least of late, has honestly been financial and money. For example, paying my July rent, which I believe will now be solved, and I'll be announcing why next week.
Okay. All right. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
Okay, let's jump to Terry. I think Terry. Yeah. All right. Here, I can unmute you. There we go. Oh, it's loud over there. Okay. Okay, Terry is typing because he's in a public space. So he's saying, okay, so Terry, is that right? Am I saying your name right? Okay. He says, I what if everything. Okay, give us a specific example. Right now, I'm trying to get published. Okay, so what's the what if thought around getting published? As you're typing away. Hi, Joe. Thanks for joining. What if the book isn't good enough? What if nobody likes it? What if I'm a what if expert? Okay, all right. Well, I'll have to call on you more if you're a what if expert. You can help us. Thank you. Yvonne, can I unmute you there? We can't hear you, so can you try to unmute yourself?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I didn't want to be called upon, but I'll do it.
What if
again, what if again, I don't have the finances to cover my mortgage and my car note? That's my primary what if.
All right. Starting to see a little bit of synergy here. Next would be Jim.
There we go. Unmuted. Hey, Danny. Good to cross paths again. I run a business, and there's a new problem to encounter and creatively solve every day. So it's usually just what landmine have we not stepped on yet, and how will we solve that problem once we step on it?
Okay. Is there anything that like rises to the surface as far as landmines?
We had a really big sales tax issue with the state of California. And so basically every penny we've made so far this year, we now owe the state of California. And so we went from like being on a really good path for growth to not in like a 48-hour period. That's kind of, and I've learned over the last couple of years of running a growing business that there's an ebb and flow. We've call them whiffio moments.
Yeah.
Where it's over. And
I think we're going to have a chance to talk about like that sort of what do we do with uncertainty, right? Mm-hmm. So let's get into that. Thank you for sharing. We'll be back. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And I'm watching the kids and my wife is gone. I may have to pop out, but I'll reconnect later.
Do what you got to do, man.
All
Thanks
right.
for joining. Okay. I don't want to mispronounce your name, but Nemdia? Maybe that, I don't know. You can tell us. I'll unmute you.
Hi, my name is Nimdia, now Anderson. That still has Clark. Yvonne is actually my mom. I invited her on.
Oh, great. Awesome.
Yeah,
my dad's here, apparently. His name is...
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm like hearing in and out. Is he saying something?
No, I was just saying that my dad is also here. So it's...
I know. That's cool.
So
I think my current worry is just leaving my job on disability because I was feeling so stuck that I had to just like get the heck out of there. And my fear is that when the disability is up and the endeavor that I'm stepping out into entrepreneurially, like coaching and things like that, what if it doesn't work? Or what if I don't, I'm not able to bring in the same income that I bring in from a working job?
Right. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Joe. Joe, can you hear us?
Yes.
Okay. I'd love to hear from you.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Me, the what if I'm not spending my time the right way, and this is the only time I would get.
What if I'm not spending my time in the right way?
And this is my last chance to get it somehow right.
Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you. And I don't know if my dad is here. I can't see him. Papi? Are you there? I sent him the link and now he appeared. Hello?
Hello.
Hi.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Are you with us?
Yeah, of course.
Awesome. Do you have video capabilities at the moment?
Yeah, well, I was in the car before, so
Okay. Okay. So could you introduce yourself and tell us about your go-to worry thought?
Well, I have no worries.
Come on.
Well, I mean, at my stage, the worries are not financial, nor they're mainly related to health and things like that.
Okay.
I think that's I realize now that that is the really, at the end of the day, that's what really counts. Oh, I have a finger there.
That's okay. Okay, thanks. Okay, so let's. I'm going to go back to the slides and talk a little bit more, and then we'll do some more discussion once we get into it further. So bear with me. We're going to learn a little bit and then discuss. All right. Here we go. You guys see that? Give me a thumbs up or a nod or something. Yeah. Wait, where is this? Okay, was that a yes? Yes, good, okay. All right, so what is worry? Okay, very briefly, the description of worry is, oh wait, 1 second, let me just move this over, some technical stuff. There we go. I like how Jim described his worry with a smile. He said that, Joe, yeah. Yeah. Resilience, there we go. Okay, so what's worry? Simply put, sort of simply, I think this is from Wikipedia, the thoughts, images, emotions, and actions of a negative nature in a repetitive, uncontrollable manner that results from a proactive cognitive risk analysis made to avoid or solve anticipated potential threats and their potential consequences. Not the most simple definition, but I think it gives us a starting point. So basically, it's when you have a problem and a solution is not yet reached, and those thoughts keep coming back. So you don't find a solution, and so you keep going on this cycle. And when you get into it, it's difficult to stop when you have those thoughts, those what-if thoughts. And they're very, so according to some research here, there should be links at the bottom of some of these pages with the research links if you're really interested in going deeper. But anyway, they engage you mentally, emotionally, and can be very disturbing and intensive. We know what it's like to feel really worried. It can turn into anxiety and even panic when it gets really bad. So these things engage you. This isn't a laughing matter. Right? This can really take over your life. In a previous section, 2.5e, which was earlier in the chart that I showed you before, we talked about the bidirectional relationship of thoughts and feelings. And one way to look at it is that anxiety is more of a bodily feeling, and worry is a little bit more in your head, a little bit more verbal and images and that sort of thing. So when you feel anxious, maybe that causes worrying thoughts. And when you have worrying thoughts, it makes you feel anxious, and so on and so on, and it's kind of a spiral, so they affect each other. This can also work for positive emotion, but since we're focusing on this, bidirectional relationship, and it can go in either way. We've also spoken in the past about how different emotions have a specific purpose evolutionarily. So if you have the thought, the perception of threat, impending danger, something bad is going to happen. Think cavemen, sitting around and they hear like a twig snap in the distance, right? What is that? Is it a saber-toothed tiger? I don't know my caveman history. Maybe somebody can correct me. If they coexisted, saber-toothed tigers and cavemen, I don't know. Neanderthals maybe. So that is associated with the feeling of anxiety, right? You have this thought, therefore it correlates to a specific feeling of anxiety. And the action associated with that is to run away. So we're programmed so that if there's a threat, we feel a certain way, our body tells us there's a danger, and therefore we escape. And that's all about survival. It's just an evolutionary thing that kept us alive so that we could procreate and stay on the earth. And humans are extremely good at survival. We've outlived most species, 99.9%, over thousands of years. And other species have changed, but humans have been humans for a very long time relative to other species. And so we've gotten very good at worrying. We've been deeply programmed, hardwired to worry and to survive. So some of that was adaptive, right? It was about helping us survive. But nowadays, I put the question to you guys, how often is the feeling of worry, of anxiety, actually helpful? Are we actually feeling threatened, needing to respond to that threat and run away? Are we being attacked? Is our life in danger, right? Are we facing bodily harm? It's kind of a rhetorical question. So let's look at these statistics. So they asked a lot of people about fear, fear and worry. So what they reported, what the data shows, is that the percentage of things feared that will never actually take place, people reported about 60%. 60% of their worries, more than half, are things that actually won't take place. If you start to think about it, that kind of makes sense. Percent of things feared that happened in the past that can't be changed, things you worry about that have already happened, 30%, because fear and worry tend to be more about what will happen in the future. But sometimes we carry things on and fear that they're going to happen again. Percent of things feared that are considered to be completely insignificant, 90%. So most people reported that their fears are actually mostly irrelevant, right? Like, why am I even so worried about this stuff? And the things feared in relation to health that will not happen, 88%, they said. So the majority of the things that you fear are probably not going to happen. It's important. And yet we have 6.3 million Americans who have a diagnosed phobia. And a phobia is like a paralyzing, debilitating fear of something. So if we have knowledge of our own, like the insignificance of our fears, why do we still have such high levels of phobia, right? This is something that we're hardwired with, and it's really difficult to escape. So these are common things that people worry about. And what's interesting to note is that we tend to worry about the same things as other people. There aren't that many things that we can worry about. Sure, you could have like some sort of strange, very specific phobia or something like that. But in general, they studied these 2,000 people and common concerns, right? If you guys take a look at this, does anything stand out to you? Do you feel like you can relate? I certainly can. Whether I'm in the right career, worried about my physique, driving. I think I have a phobia of cars. I think that's the most dangerous actual threat to our life right now. Like giant metal, fast-moving vehicles. And the common effects of that worry, we can all relate to these also. Sleepless nights, loss of confidence, arguments, reduced appetite, poor performance at work, and that's a big issue. That's something that I'm doing in my business because companies are losing millions and millions of dollars because of poor performance, and these are things that can be improved upon relatively simply. Creating distance in your relationships, avoiding social events, increasing alcohol consumption, feeling paranoid, and even nausea, because it really has a strong effect on your gut. And that's also a different module that we'll get into in a few weeks. So spent time worrying. Average about 14 hours. This is all based on this one study, but it's 2,000 people. It's fairly substantial. And 14 hours per week worrying. That's a lot of hours per week. If you add up, if you do the math, that's 744 hours a year, 45,000 hours in a lifetime, basically 5 years of your life spent worrying on average. And for me, I think it's more. I think it'd be more than that, more than 14 hours a week. I think it's gotten better, and I've brought these skills to bear and seen a difference. If you'd asked me before, several years ago, it would have been much higher. But that's astonishing. What if you could have those 5 years back? What if you could have 5 more years of your life that weren't filled with worry? It could have a huge impact. So think about 5 years going forward, what impact that could have. So today we're going to talk about going from warrior to warrior. Wink. Okay, so this is a little bit of the kind of evolutionary science. Our brain, and we have a doctor present, maybe more than one, I don't know. So correct me if I'm wrong, please, at any moment. So, all right, very basically, the brain is really 3, but we can call it 2 different major regions, right? We have what we have in common with most other animals, which is this, well, mammals, let's say, which is the emotional core of the brain. If you kind of make a fist, you can sort of imagine, this is the center of the brain, this is the brain stem, and, or maybe more like this. And the core of the brain, that's your emotional brain. We've talked about this at length in other sessions, so I'm not going to get too much into it. But this can hijack and take over. This is the primitive, the caveman, the mammal, the one who is all about survival and reacting, fight, flight, freeze, things like that. And then we have the rational parts. If you kind of wrap your hand around your other fist, and that's your rational brain. That's what, makes us human. That's what makes us different than the other animals. Allows us to think and have self-awareness and be creative and spirituality, create rockets and go to space and things like that. So these different regions of your brain will respond very differently to the question, what if? Think about this kind of lizard brain, or the mammalian brain, or call it whatever you want, but that sort of core of your brain that responds to the what if question by freaking out, by being like, okay, I'm going to run away because this is about survival, and I'm going to overreact, and I'm going to catastrophize, versus the sort of modern man, modern woman, modern whatever, sorry for, I don't know what this illustration is, but that part of your brain is the problem solving, the creative thinking, the part of your brain that when asked what if, will calmly assess the situation and make the most of it, or say, this isn't important and I'm going to deal with it another time if it ever comes up again. Different parts of your brain respond differently to that question. So we have to learn how to access. So we've talked about how we are super wired to worry. It's in our design. But just because your brain wants to worry doesn't mean you have to, because we have the choice, which is also offered to us by that more evolved part of our brain that can override, that can be really creative and understand the science and learn how to regulate our body, because we're smart like that. My dog, Luna, who's over there somewhere, doesn't really have that option. She has some of that more evolved brain. She can sit and understand a few things and communicate in some ways, but she doesn't really have the option of going, is that what if question really valid? Let me think things through. No, she's just like, squirrel and, stick and car and plastic bag. She's afraid of that for some reason. So it's really important for us to develop a better relationship with our worry. We tend to see worry as negative. We tend to see it as, this is something wrong with us, there's something wrong with me, and there's judgment, and there's guilt, and there's worry about worry, and all kinds of levels. So one thing we can do is develop more self-compassion and understand that worry is something that we evolved to have to protect us. It's something useful, and have a more kind of compassionate, loving relationship with our worry. One way to look at it is that worry is like your loyal soldier, always trying to protect you. I don't know if you watch Game of Thrones, but you can imagine yourself as like the king or the queen or the leader of the army, and you have like this whole army, and these people are your worry, and they're like, anything tries to get in here, we're going to stop them and kill them, and we're going to, but you can also learn to control and command your army. You can also look at it as, you know, a cute little chicken little who is in your brain thinking, oh, the sky is falling. And I actually meant to put a picture of my dog in here because I like to think of it as like a little puppy, like a really friendly, cute dog who just, you know, is that part of your brain is like this mammal who lives inside of you, who is afraid of getting hurt and, you know, and runs away. So, you know, you kind of go, okay, little puppy, I understand, you know, you're scared, but it's not really something to worry about. And a way to illustrate that, I kind of stole this from the internet, is this quick little clip. I think I should be able to, hopefully you hear it.
My master made me this collar. He is a good and smart master, and he made me this collar so that I may talk, squirrel. My master is good.
Okay, could you guys actually hear that? Yeah? No? Okay. But basic, well, I don't know, but he, you know, he's talking and then he just can't help himself. He sees a squirrel and he's like, squirrel! And then comes back, right? So in this particular study, and I'm gonna go through this relatively quickly, but basically in the study they talk about how adversity is something good for us. And it's not that we need to avoid adversity, it's that we need to appreciate adversity. Because in reality, adversity is what makes us grow. There are extremes, of course. If you have no adversity, if you avoid adversity, if you're like a helicopter parent and, you know, your kids live in a bubble, or if you isolate yourself and get away from, Terry says squirrel, yes. If you get away from adversity, you're not giving yourself a chance to grow and, you know, and develop. And there is a peak, according to the study, of which life satisfaction is highest at a certain point in adversity, right? So we want to embrace adversity. That's what makes life worth living, right? The challenges and the opportunities for growth. So when we're worried about something, it's, in a way, you can think of it as an opportunity for growth. And that's how it always has been in your life, if you think about it going back. It's not that adversity is the problem. The problem is when we lack the tools for handling the adversity. And not enough adversity can leave you feeling more vulnerable. In other words, if you are isolated and you don't learn to face challenges and you don't have a history of facing challenges and overcoming them, then you know, you feel kind of helpless. You feel like, how am I supposed to handle this if I haven't had a chance to do it in the past, living in a bubble? Okay, so back to you guys. I'm gonna stop the share. Come back to you guys. If you have video, please turn it on. I would love to see your beautiful faces. I can ask to start video, ask to start video, ask to start video. Okay, you guys are there, I think. Cool. All right, so I'd love to hear from you guys. Your inner warrior. So there's like this common coaching exercise in which you draw your inner warrior, and it's kind of like a monster. You like draw, you know, you draw your little monster that lives in your head. But I don't think that's as effective as drawing your monster, drawing your inner critic, not as something scary, but as something that you can actually build a positive relationship with. Because it's not something that is trying to attack you. It's not your enemy. It's your friend. The worry in your head is trying to keep you safe. You have a chance to make friends with it and to understand that it's just this little puppy who's afraid of things, and that's okay. So I'd like to ask you guys, and I'll go backwards this time, to describe your inner warrior. What does your inner warrior sound like? What does the voice sound like? What does it look like? For me, I've decided that it's like my dog. And that's been a shift, because previously it was like the worst version of myself, you know, instead of this like cute thing that's like, okay, thank you. I appreciate your worry. I'm gonna go over here now. Terry says, mine looks like Stitch and sounds like Stitch too, like from the Lilo and Stitch from the Disney. Is it Disney? Disney, right? Oh yeah, because it's at Disney World. Yeah, I even went on that ride. It was very scary. Cool. Yeah. Who else? Let's see. Joe, are you there? Are you with us, Joe? Hey, unmute.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Your question is again?
It's if you could describe the worrier who lives inside your head.
Okay. It's always like, yeah, it's what if, yeah, what if I'm trying, the warrior is like whether I'm passing.
So not the thoughts, not the thoughts themselves, but if you could create like a caricature, like a little monster or animal or spirit or person or whatever it is that kind of lives inside you and talks to you, what would it be like? Who is that? What is that?
Gee, sorry.
That's okay. Take your time. We can come back to you.
Okay, good.
Okay.
Just come back to me.
Okay. Sounds good. Yvonne, are you there?
Yes.
Yes.
I would say like an octopus, because once the worry began, my hands are in everything trying to fix it.
Ah, okay. I like that.
For real.
Strong visual with all the tentacles kind of coming
Mm-hmm.
once. Yeah. Okay. Arnoldo, if you're there with us, I can unmute you.
Okay, hello.
Hi.
Hi, hello again.
Hi. Did you hear the question about?
Yeah. So how do I see the fear? Is that?
It's kind of like, creating a little person or animal or something that lives inside of your head that, normally it's like a drawing exercise, but since we're on video, we're not going to actually draw them. We're just going to describe what that little worrying thing in your head is
like. I don't know.
Okay, take a second and I'll come back to you.
Okay.
Okay. Ndia, is that right? Okay. How about you?
So mine, I feel, is like twofold. So I would probably consider myself a mime when it comes to worry, because I worry in silence.
Oh, I lost you. Hold on. Sorry, we've lost you. I'm going to unmute you again. I'm not sure what happened. There we go.
Okay. So mine is twofold. I am a silent worrier. Mm-hmm. So I would consider my character to be a mime. Mm-hmm. But internally, it's like a Tasmanian devil, like the nonstop whirlwind going on inside.
Huh. So externally you exhibit it as a mime, mm-hmm. but the little thing in your head is like more of a mm-hmm. Tasmanian devil.
Yeah.
All right. And Terry mentioned sometimes it's like a hydra. You cut off one head and two more appear. Mm. So it's like this kind of scary beast. But also there's like that like tentacle vibe in a way, sort of like what Yvonne said. Let's go to Kat.
Mine is definitely still like a scared little kid. Like I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop. And because I have specialized in not letting anyone know that that's how I'm feeling. So it really resonates, that I'm like the mime on the outside. But I have discovered that the more vulnerable I am and the more I am able to share my fears with friends and family and really just anyone, and the less I care, the less anxious I am. So, yeah.
All right. So like a scared little kid.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. And okay. So let's come back to Joe. Have you thought of something? It's okay if you haven't. I just want to give you.
That's why I wrote in the chat that it's when you mentioned it could be a person, not animal or something. I thought so too that it's the kid in me, the child. It's not the scared. It's the pensive child.
Okay.
I always worry.
Okay. So also like a younger. Is it a kind of younger version of you, or is it a different child?
No. Yeah, it's kind of the younger version of me that always don't know whether like confused child on me that always question whether I'm right to assert or I'm wrong to assert, whether I know what I'm doing.
The doubts,
I don't know what I'm doing, whether I have to give other the authority over me or whether I should fight not to get the fight authority. It's like that kid that always not sure where she stands.
Yeah. And from that, I'm also hearing, some of the judgment thoughts, which we did discuss in a previous module, and it's often difficult to distinguish the different types of kind of thoughts that are going in your head. So one thing you can try is that if you do have a particular kind of ugly feeling, kind of gross thought in your head that's making you feel uncomfortable. Ask yourself what kind of thought it is. Is it more of a judgment thought? Are you judging yourself, judging others? Something that you can look at with kind of a more accurate analysis type of thing? Or is it a what if thought? Like, is it more of a worry, which is what might happen in the future? Right. So that's something that can maybe help you separate the different types of thoughts. And it could be that they come from different voices in your head, different types of, judgment comes from you. Yeah. Okay. Arnoldo, if you're still there, if you'd like to share with us, but your audio's gone for some reason, so it may not be. But I think it just came back. Can you hear me? Arnoldo? Papi? Okay, I'm not sure what's going on, but that's all right. So all right, so let's go back and, if you have a thought, you can chime in. All right, so let's go back to the share. And you know what? This would actually be a good time for my dad to chime in because so he's a cardiologist. And I want to just talk a little bit about something called heart rate variability, which I've asked my dad a little bit about. And the papers and things that he shared with me were just way over my head. And it's more about like the disease model. And we're talking more about well-being than disease, but we can just share that worriers, high reported worriers, are at greater risk for cardiovascular disease. I'm not sure how much my dad has come across in the medical research, if they get into that, if they get into the psychological part. But studies have shown that this is very scary. And part of it is that worrying relates to low heart rate variability. And this is very simplified. So heart rate variability we also discussed in a previous module, and basically heart rate variability is the distance between your heartbeats, right? So your heart rate and how much it varies between the heart rate, right? Is it super high, super low? And when you worry, you're kind of in this like state of like a kind of jagged, not really changing that much. You're always just like a little bit tense, especially if it's chronic worry over time. So you don't have that like heightened state, relaxed state, heightened state, relaxed state. It's more like, okay, I'm always just like a little bit like I've had too much coffee all the time. You know, that's what worry sort of looks like. And research shows that trait anxiety and worry, in other words, when worry is a very strong part of your personality, it shows up as a trait, are associated with higher heart rate and lower heart rate variability during wakefulness and sleep. And low HRV and high HR are risk factors for cardiovascular disease. My dad could, tell you about that a lot better than I could. And if he's listening, it'd be great to have an explanation if there is a simple one. So the effects on health is that low HRV is marked by low parasympathetic activity. Again, we talked about this specifically in the previous module, the one that we just did last time. Parasympathetic activity, basically it's rest and digest. It's when your body calms down, heals you, digests, sleeps, and things like that. And when you have low heart rate variability, that means also that you're more like on alert. So your body's in sympathetic mode. It's always like responding to a threat. So your body doesn't get a chance to relax. It doesn't get a chance to heal itself. It doesn't get a chance to recuperate and recover. And what you want is to truly relax. If you're always worried when you should be relaxing, then your immune system is compromised. So when sustained for long periods, it can be pathogenic. In other words, you can have diseases, cardiovascular disease and others, somatically and psychologically, so how you feel and think. I'm going to go through this pretty quickly. There was a study, they got all these students, they attached this thing to them that reads their heart throughout the day. They measured the different stressors. They took a journal, all kinds of stuff. And prolonged worry were associated with heart rate and heart rate variability, etc. Boring stuff. But the important thing to take away is this. It's not the frequency, it's not how often you worry. It's the duration of worry. We all have very frequent worries. It's how long that worry stays a worry in your head. Is it something that pops up and you go, okay, I'm sorting that into the no big deal pile? Or is it, I'm going to be stuck in this worry for a long time? Because when you're stuck in that worry for a long time, of course, your heart rate is elevated and you're kind of in that tense mode for a really long time. That's what's really important. It's how long the worry lasts, not how often it happens. We don't want to get rid of worry altogether. We'd have to have some serious surgery, and it probably wouldn't work. It would kill you. So basically, when they worked on this, when they worked on people's worry, their heart got better, basically, in very simple terms. Another study found that almost half of daily worries were seen as problem-solving attempts in both high and low worriers. So what is a worry? People saw them as problem-solving attempts. I'm concerned that something's going to happen, and so that thought process in my head is me trying to solve that problem. That's how most people, or half the people, think about it in this study. Except the people who worry a lot, who have extended periods of worry duration, were more likely to rate their attempts as unsuccessful. So they tried to problem solve and they weren't successful, so they keep repeating the worry over and over and over in their head. Okay? Chat. Interesting how long versus how often. Yeah. So it's not that we want to eliminate worry from our brain. It's that we need to have the tool to handle it better when it does come up. There's nothing wrong with you if you worry. You just want to work on that relationship with the worry. So problem solving, when we talked about the brain, right? So problem solving is something that happens that humans are really good at because we have this evolved part of our brain, that outer layer, the neocortex, which helps us think more rationally. And that's the part we need for problem solving. When a worry comes up, we want to use that smart part of our brain and work with it rationally. That's the part that's going to help us through the worry. However, if you're in stress mode, you're not using that outer part of your brain. You're going into the emotional core of your brain, and you're like Chicken Little, freaking out. And that is not useful for problem solving, right? Problem solving on its own may not have strong physiological consequences and may even be adaptive. In other words, it helps us adapt to our environments. It helps us survive. Problem solving is good. However, being stuck in the cycle of not actually problem solving, but thinking it's problem solving, that's when we get into trouble, and that's when that duration extends in our worrying. So we want to peel worry off from problem solving. You don't need the emotion of worry to problem solve. The emotion of worry comes from this part of your brain and certain chemicals that are produced, and you're trying to protect yourself and have a visceral reaction. But the problem solving is slower and more rational and doesn't need that Chicken Little, that my pet dog doesn't need that. Okay, back to you. All right, so take a quick look. Worry versus problem solving. Reflect on a time of recent worry. What was the problem your brain was trying to solve? What was the attempt at problem solving? And how did that emotion of worry help you or not in that situation? Did it help you? Maybe it did. Or maybe it wasn't useful. So I'd like to hear from you guys. A time when your brain was trying to problem solve. Can you guys think of an example of that? And I will try to think of an example as well. Who wants to go first? All right, go for it.
So I think one of the most recent ones, which is something I previously mentioned, was I was just feeling so stuck in my job. I was like, I got to get out of here. But how, when my monthly bills are $8,000 a month, right? And I'm like, but if I don't, I'm going to die, like mentally. These were my two processes. How do we survive? Either way, if we survive this way, I'm going to die. So and I mean like die, like soul wise, mentally wise, like I'm not going to be any good for anybody anyway.
Yeah.
So, I was just like trying to figure it out. Like maybe I can do this, maybe I can do that. And it was just like this ongoing hamster wheel in my brain, days and days and days. I had to take off work just so I can process the mental madness that was going through my head.
Right.
And I mean, eventually something did work out, but it wasn't until I like let it go. And I was like, all right, okay, whatever's going to happen is going to happen. So but I can't do this no more.
Okay, so what was let's identify the what if thought, right? Or one of them. There are probably many, which is normal. So what was one of the what if thoughts that you had?
What if my husband's pissed off that I'm not working anymore?
Okay, right.
I think I was most worried about him.
Okay, all right. So when you were worried in that moment, what was your brain attempting to problem solve?
How do I make sure he's good, I'm good, the kids are good, everything can stay the same, but this major thing can be different because I need it to be different.
Okay, so think about the emotion, that kind of anxiety around that worry.
Mm-hmm.
Was it useful to you or was it not useful to you, and how?
So I feel eventually it was useful to me because I didn't keep it to myself, and I started to let other people know this is my concern, this is my worry, this is what I'm going through. And once I did that, I was informed, oh, did you know you could do this? And you can still get paid while you're off? And this and this. And I was like, oh, stop it.
Okay,
Next day,
so
yeah, I was on it.
so the emotion of worry in this case gave you some sort of data, some sort of some sort of incentive, some sort of thought process that made you say, all right, I need to tell other people about it so that I can problem solve and get solutions for it.
Yeah.
Some of the ones you mentioned.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, I outsourced my problems.
Yeah. There you go. It's problem solving, right? So sometimes the emotion can, if you have a kind of a good relationship with it, you can go, okay, this is telling me something. This emotion is helping me. What am I learning from it? What's it trying to do for me? And then you can take an action, which is like that warrior thing, taking an action, right? And it reminds me a little of what Kat said. Kat, could you tell us and relate maybe what you were saying before about that voice in your head and learning to tell other people, etc. Does that resonate with you?
Yeah. I mean, well, just on the money and job front, though, like that one has been the biggest worry of late, and I was in really bad job situation and under a lot of stress, and so when I knew it was coming to an end, like I had all the positive thoughts around it, and I knew that something better was gonna come. And then like as time started ticking down, I started getting more and more anxious, and then like having all these money worries, and like started getting really, really overwhelmed. However, whether it was about that or other issues of anxiety, like the more you talk about it, it actually helps. And I found that the more I talked about it and the more I reached out to friends, the more they were willing to help. And as it turns out, like the thing that I am announcing next week, or the opportunity that now I secured, it came through like someone I worked with before who referred me into a job. And so it was never posted, right? And it was all just like word of mouth, and came through a personal connection, and it's like everything I was looking for. But that came through being vulnerable and talking about it.
Right. So reaching out is huge, and it's no coincidence that we're hearing it from multiple people here, because so the previous module wasn't the breathing one. It was actually about belonging and about social circles and the importance of that and resilience. And it is probably the biggest factor when it comes to resilience. Other people matter. That is sort of the headline of positive psychology research. Other people matter. So reaching out is huge, and having social support, especially when it comes to worries. So in this case, we're focusing, kind of laser focusing on this one thing, which is thought, the what if thought in your head. What is the line? If you could write it out in a few words, what if blank, right? So when you can parse it, when you can really bring it into that fundamental what if question, it gives you a chance. You can write it down. You could try to isolate it in your head, but that gives you a chance to go, okay, let me deal with this the way that I really want to, and not let it control me. Right? So what's the what if thought? Right? Okay, so for the sake of time, I think we'll just go back to the slides, and I wanted to read what Terry wrote also, because he doesn't have audio. He put in here. Yes. Okay. Did they attach the duration of worry to unsuccessful attempts to self-esteem issues? Future thinking, the difference between starting a thought. This can be solved versus this is so hard, trying to problem solve. Recently, I can sort it all, but recently I've not freaked out because of a problem. Okay. There's a lot there. but I'm not sure if I think that what they're suggesting is that a consequence of that worry is diminished self-esteem. I don't know if, it's possible, because these are correlations, not causations, that low self-esteem, that it's bidirectional, that it may be low self-esteem is the thing that causes you to worry more. I'm not sure, and I'd have to read the study more carefully, but that's actually a very good point, that it can go in both directions. And future thinking, the difference between starting a thought, this can be solved. Exactly. Okay, so we're going to get into that. We're going to talk about that shortly. All right, going back to the slides. If you guys have more questions or any comments, chat box. All right, so here we are. All right, understanding worry a little bit more. I'm not sure this is the best title for this section, but okay, in this book and this research from Susan Jeffers, this book's called Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. And I think that might be the headline instead of warrior versus worrier, because this is what it's all about. Feel the fear and do it anyway. So she lists 5 truths about fear. Let's go through them. Fear will never go away as long as you continue to grow. We were saying, fear, worry, it's not something that you want to eliminate. It keeps you safe. It helps you predict the future. It keeps you on your toes. And adversity is good for us. We want worries. We want things to worry about. We want that. We just want to have the right relationship with those concerns if we want to continue to grow. And the only way to get rid of the fear of doing something is to go out and actually do it. Otherwise, you continue doing that supposed problem solving in your head, and it doesn't become real. The only way to feel better about yourself is to go out and do it. And to Terry's point before, make deposits in our self-confidence bank, so to speak. You're going to feel better about yourself if you build up a track record of going out and doing things that you're afraid of. Because then you have examples and you say, I handled it before, I'll handle it again. Not only am I going to experience fear whenever I'm unfamiliar territory, but so is everybody else. We all, as we said before, we have similar fears. People tend to have, relatable fears. We're not that unique. Also, if you look at that brain thing and the problem solving versus the emotional territory, when you worry, you're stressed, which is narrow focus. You're in survival mode. You're focused on the threat and not on the big picture. So you become very me-centered and you tend to think, oh, this is all about me and nobody else can understand me. But in reality, if you are able to access that broader thinking, you will realize that you're not alone and that most other human beings have experienced or are experiencing similar fears, which is an incentive to talk to other people about it and reach out. Pushing through fear is less frightening than living with the underlying fear that comes from a feeling of helplessness. So if you go in the opposite direction and you don't build up that confidence from facing fear, from going out and confronting worries in the right way, and I don't mean oh, I'm going to go do something stupid because that's going to make me brave. No, I'm talking about rational analysis. And if you don't do that and you isolate yourself, it's going to contribute to that feeling of helplessness. In other words, what's the point of going out there if I'm not going to be able to achieve this thing? If you don't put yourself out there, you're going to feel increasingly helpless. Worrying makes you more likely to make an emotional rather than a rational decision. So when we believe that worrying is problem solving, what we're actually doing is making emotional decisions rather than rational decisions. It's not to say that emotional decisions are bad. It's that when we make emotional decisions, we want to do it from a place of that more kind of evolved and bigger picture, more important decision place, which is the rational place. We say rational, and I don't want to pigeonhole this or associate it with any preconceived notions or stereotypes or whatever. It doesn't mean that one is good and one is bad. It doesn't mean that when you have an emotion, you should judge it, because that's part of the problem, right? That just makes you more threatened, more in that threatened state. You can't tell somebody, be rational, oh, why are you being so emotional? Men tend to have more of this stereotype of, being rational and kind of being cut off from their own emotions. And that does no good, because you're basically denying yourself the opportunity to process vital information that your brain is trying to tell you, and instead ignoring that information and making not a completely informed decision, which you're calling a rational decision, but it's actually irrational a lot of the time. Emotions are data. If you're ignoring them, you're ignoring a lot of the data. Chronic worry is correlated with poor emotional regulation. So if you're chronically worried and you're in that constant threat state, you're very focused on the threat, you're going from that core emotional place, it's going to be difficult to regulate your emotions. It's going to be difficult to go, okay, what am I feeling right now? Am I going to react strongly and have an outburst, or be able to step back and recognize what's going on more collectively. Worries are often irrational themselves, and we're gonna dissect that a little more. Worries demonstrate a stronger negativity bias than non-worriers. So if you walk into a room, I think this has been demonstrated in some research too, if you walk into a room and it has half negative statements plastered on the wall and half positive statements, 50-50, the higher worriers are going to go into that looking for a threat, and they're going to notice, and they're going to they're going to report a higher proportion of negative statements to positive statements, because you're out there looking for it. It's going to be a confirmation bias that you have, where you're going to see the negative, because that's what you're looking for when you're worried. And it makes sense, because you're perceiving a threat. So why is it that emotion actually feels so real? Well, your brain only lives right now. Your brain exists now. It doesn't exist in the future or in the past. So your brain and body think worries that they're imagining are real. You're imagining a saber-toothed tiger. Your body thinks it's real. Your body's producing chemicals. It's making you sweat. It's making you go, you need to run in the other direction, right? So it feels like it's happening right now. The worry feels super real, even if it's irrational. And it's kind of this snowball effect. So the thoughts build on top of each other, making each one stronger than the one before it, and they stack, making irrational worries feel more rational than they actually are. What are you barking for? My dog's barking. Okay. And that can lead to a panic attack, right? When those things stack and create that snowball effect, the worrying thoughts have a bidirectional relationship with the physiological response, and that can get worse and worse. And it kind of looks like this. So I'd love an example. Who has an example okay, so basically, I'll describe this first, actually. For example, an initial worry, a small worry, I'm going to fail this test. Or what if I fail this test? Kind of a future worry, right? Which leads to, I'm going to fail this class. Which leads to, I'll never get into college. Which leads to, my parents are going to kill me. Which leads to, I'll never amount to anything. When you look at this more closely, you're going from, I'm going to fail this test, to I'll never amount to anything. It's irrational, right? It doesn't make sense. Failing this test does not mean I'll never amount to anything. But your brain and your body feel like, I'm going to fail this test, and there's an immediate threat, and it spins out of control, and you start feeling stressed, and so you start worrying, and you start worrying and feeling stressed and back and forth, and the degree of worry increases. But if you are able to break it down into each statement that you're making, such as, I'm going to fail this test, I'm going to fail this class, et cetera, they can relate. One attaches to the next one. They sort of stack. So they feel like I'll never amount to anything feels just as real as I'm going to fail this test. but in reality, that's not true. I asked for an example, but I think we're just going to keep going because of time. Okay, so Chris Peterson, one of the founders of positive psychology, said that making a mountain out of a molehill or making a Himalaya out of a mountain. So, blowing things out of proportion. Resilience is about flexible and accurate thinking, and worries are actually inaccurate. So if they are accurate, what you need to do is act, not worry. So you have to decide if this worry is actually something to act upon, or if, like most worries, the majority of worries, it's actually not accurate and doesn't deserve the attention. You don't need to extend the duration of the worry. So what are your molehills that have turned into Himalayas? Let's go back to you guys. I'll take one or two examples of a tiny worry that you've had that has turned into an overblown catastrophic thinking. Anyone? PJ joined us a little bit later. Hi, PJ. I'm not sure if you can hear us or see us or if you're willing to participate, but if you have a molehill that you'd like to tell us about, please do, or you can type it into the chat box. Was that a hand raise? India, is that a hand raise, or are you just wiping your camera? Okay, well, I'm going to call on you anyway, if that's okay. Hold on, let me unmute you for a second. Is it working? There we go. All right.
So I totally was like, oh, I'm not going to think about this one because there's no way I'm going to have to answer it.
Oh, you don't? That's okay.
A small thought. Well, in relation to maybe like me experiencing anxiety at times in my life.
Remember, we're looking at what is the small thought in your head worry that ended up being a big anxiety?
So it's usually that it's like if someone else is driving, I'm always like, well, what if they're not quick enough? In the reaction, if something pops out in the road, what if the road is slippery? And because I have a mountain near my house, which I fear because I always think this is my day. This is the day. This is the day we're going to topple over the side. And it's going to be me because amazing things always happen to me. So why not this? Why wouldn't this be the thing that would take me out? I still go out with a bang, right?
There
but
you go.
It's going through all of those emotions in one, and then I just go numb and start freaking out because I'm thinking this is it every time.
So it's like the person driving looks away for a second.
Mm-hmm.
What if they don't look back? What if they don't look back and somebody crosses in front of them? What if somebody crosses in front of them and they veer off the road and they can't correct, and one thing leads to another, and next thing you know, you are literally tumbling down the side
of the mountain.
Yeah. Right? So your thoughts are tumbling off the mountain, and so are you.
Exactly.
Right? So one thing leads to another. Okay, thank you for that example. Terry said not completing my original degree. Potentially, well, look, I would love to spend more time breaking all of these down, but we have a little bit more to cover, so I'm going to go back. And at the end, if people want to stay longer, that's cool. I just don't want to overextend. Okay, building your warrior muscles. This is important. What's courage? This guy is excellent. His research is awesome, Robert Biswas-Diener. And he says that courage is when your willingness to act is greater than your fear. The only way to contact fears and worries is to tackle them, is to move toward them. It's making your why bigger than your but. It's your willingness to act is greater than your fear. In other words, making your why bigger than your but. I don't know where that came from, but I think it's funny and very clever. It's the reason for acting, that kind of more evolved human brain part of you that knows why you have to do something is really engaged. You really know, you've asked that question, why is this so important to me? Which pales, so the little buts, the what if parts, pale in comparison, because the why is so important to you that when something comes in the way, you can dismiss it, you can deal with it. Nietzsche said, he who has a why to live can live through almost any how. And he has a really cool mustache. Jeffers, who we were looking at earlier, feel the fear and do it anyway. Doing this can help you build tolerance for uncertainty, because if you have the experience of dealing with uncertainty in the past and overcoming adversity, then you'll be confident that when something else comes up, you're going to be able to handle it. Which brings me to, you've handled it. I feel like I'm on a game show or like, I don't know. Our next, yeah, okay. So who's our next contestant on You've Handled It? You've handled it. Describe one thing that you didn't think that you could handle, but then you did. Okay, so let's get an example from, PJ, are you with us? If you could unmute yourself, I won't force you, but if you would like to. Yvonne, how about you?
Repeat the question, please.
The question is for a new car. Okay, the question is something you've handled in the past that you didn't think you could.
Possibly, I don't want to go there. That's too sad. But I'm handling staying in my home, actually, as long as I have. I really didn't know or have a clue how that was going to happen, and it worked out by the grace of God and what he allowed me to be able to do financially.
By the grace of God and by the grace of you also.
Yes.
So a useful exercise can be to ask yourself this question and to make a list and go, what are some things that I didn't think I could handle that I actually did? And they can be small or big. But doing this gives you kind of a piggy bank, a repository of examples that you can draw from when there's uncertain situations or the worry comes up. What if I can't handle it? Well, I have a list of things that I have handled, right? Thank you for that example. Okay, and we're going back. We're going back. All right. So there are several exercises here, which, if you want to just get a mental picture of them, I'm also happy to share later on, but we don't have time now. 5 things that you want to create for yourself that are slightly or largely out of your comfort zone. And then what are the whys and what's the why? Big, like, why is this important to me? And then what are your but what if, your objections? And if your why is bigger than your but, then the objections are kind of like, oh, this is insignificant. This is similar to what we already did. This is a really great TED Talk. Kelly McGonigal, How to Make Stress Your Friend, which is somewhat like what we've been discussing. TED Talks, there's a lot of good stuff, so Google that guy. She says you can frame the stress response as helpful for performance. So every time you have a stress response or something that you're worried about, you can do this flip it exercise. So you flip that worry into something that you're excited for. It's tricky, but something that you're worried about might be something that you need to move toward that's exciting, that will help you grow. That's an adversity that's going to be helpful for you. So do the exercise. Thinking about it is one thing. Doing the exercise is different. You can think about going to the gym. That's not going to make you stronger. You actually have to go to the gym. So doubt your doubts. When it comes to what-if statements, things that are in the future, you can't look for evidence for or against. That's something we did in a different module, and that's with a different type of thinking. That's more of judgment thoughts. with the what if thoughts, with the future thoughts, you can't look for evidence for or against because it hasn't happened yet. There's no evidence, right? It's a hypothetical situation. If it hasn't happened, it's hypothetical. Some may be more or less likely, but you can stand up for yourself. You can doubt your doubts. You can kind of have a little bit of a skeptical mind saying, okay, is that little voice in my head, my like puppy brain that's afraid of something? Be a little, am I really going to believe that this is actually what my brain is telling me it is? You can stand up for yourself. You can also tell yourself that you've handled it. You handled it before, you'll handle it again. I think I need to get a poster on my wall that says you'll handle it. So whenever, a client doesn't show up or let's see, what are the things I'm worried about? I don't know. When my wife is coming home late or something and I'm worried, I don't know. You know what? Handle it before, handle it again. And a quick little thing that you can do here is that you can designate worry time. And it's a neat trick, right? So if you have things that you're worried about, take a note of them, write the things down that you're worried about. Okay, what am I actually worried about? And go, all right, I don't have time for this shit right now, but I can designate, all right, so tomorrow at 2 p.m., I'll have my worry time. So put them in like a little bucket to go and say, all right, I'm going to deal with this at this time. Right now I'm doing this thing. That's going to be for later. And, ironically, once you get to it later tomorrow, you're going to realize all those things that you said you needed to sit and think and worry about are probably not that important because most worries are actually irrational. Mexican worry dolls or Guatemalan worry dolls, it's this thing where they used to give them to kids, or they I don't know if they still do. You can buy them online, and there's all kinds of cool products out there that I've seen, like worry dolls, worry toys, and basically they'd give them to the kid and say, okay, we're gonna put this under your pillow, and this doll is going to absorb all your worries and take them away. So you go to sleep, you wake up the next morning, and of course, that thing you were worried about is no longer a big deal. And then finally, this exercise of I'll handle it. So what are the things you worry about? And then you can do this with a partner. This is a fun thing. We're basically out of time now, otherwise I would do it. But you have the things that you worry about, and then you have somebody tell you about it, and you respond, I'll handle it. And the act of actually saying that out loud, I'll handle it because I've handled everything that has come my way in the past. Or you just say, I'll handle it at the end of the line. And if you just repeat that I'll handle it phrase in your head, you will convince yourself. It actually works. And the last thing, I think this is also very important, we spoke about this 2 modules ago, is that when you're in stress mode, you're having a physiological response to stress, to a threat. Your body is kind of hijacked, right? You have chemicals in your body. You're in a sympathetic response, and it's not just always in your head. Sometimes you need to work on your body because anxiety is very strongly in your body. That's where it comes from. That's where everything is produced. That's how you're feeling it. It feels real. So you also need an antidote to deal with that, which is breathing. And we take that for granted. Visualization is also very powerful. So this cool little thing is this vacuum breath. So you imagine your inhale sucks up the worry, and the exhale releases the energy into the air, letting it evaporate. I think it's a kind of cool visual. There's a lot of great research on the power of visualization combined with parasympathetic breathing. In other words, breathe in for 5 counts, breathe out for 6 counts. So a little bit longer on the exhale. That's going to calm you down. Longer on the exhale. You can also try to breathe in for 5, hold for 5, breathe out for 6, hold for 6, right? Okay, so we've covered a lot of stuff, a lot of ground, and I'm sorry to go a little fast at the end, but it's already 8, so I'll just sum up everything real quick. And if you want to stay, I'm happy to stick around. Thanks, Terry. I don't know if you've already left, but thank you. Worry is an emotion that we've evolved to feel in the face of threat or danger. I think I've repeated that enough times, right? We have old programming in a new world, an old brain for a new world. Most of the things we worry about today don't actually come to fruition. And unless we're under immediate threat, the emotion of worry gets in the way of effective problem solving. The emotion comes from a different part of the brain than the one we need to problem solve. So we need to calm it down, such as the breathing exercise, and get into a place where we're actually accessing that more calm and rational part of our brain, which also means really listening to our emotions. So learn to appreciate what worry is trying to do for you. What information is it trying to give you, and understand that it's trying to protect you, and recognize that you have that choice. As hard as that may sound, you do have that choice. You want to calm the physical sensations of worry. Thank you, and thank you for showing. Have a good night, all. Thank you. Oh, is she gone? Okay. Control the emotion by reframing worry as excitement or useful energy. And remind yourself that you'll handle it. And if your mind goes to worst case scenarios, we didn't really cover that, but go from worst case to what's the best case. So you'll feel in control of your emotions, you'll stay in problem solving mode, you preserve your health and well-being, and you prevent worry from escalating. Okay, finally, we've already lost a few people here, but I just wanted to share a special offer that normally when I do my intro sessions for coaching one-on-one, they're $100, but if you've joined us today, I'm happy to offer them for $50 off. And there's a promo code that you can use. Just use the meetup promo code, and I'm happy to do that with you. I can discuss more if you're interested. So, and you can talk about the worry stuff or any other goals that you have. So that's all for me, and thank you guys so much for coming. I'm happy to stick around if you have questions. Otherwise, handle it, because you handled it before. Bye. Or not, I'm here. Questions?